like to call this meeting to order. It is now 6 o'clock. Kevin, would you lead the Pledge of Allegiance and place the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Salute the flag of the state of Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Joan, roll call, please.
Charles Long, Chris Martinson, Michael Shaw,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito,
Here.
Kevin Mitchell.
Here.
Okay, move down to item number 2, approval of agenda. Do I have any motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Did you have any changes?
No, any changes? No, they're just reports.
Okay. I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Okay, approval of minutes. Do we have any changes
A motion to approve the minutes.
for July 15th, 2019?
Yes.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Okay, now do we have for August 6th, 2019, approval of minutes?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Okay. Approval of consent agenda items. Do we have any discussion on any of the items?
No, I'll go ahead and motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Joan, roll call?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Okay, we are down to item number 5, study circle, public comment. We have one public comment, Renee Hardy.
Good evening, board members, staff, and visitors. My name is Renee Hardy. I'm a parent out at Navajo, New Mexico. I have a child at Navajo Middle School. And this evening I'm here with a concern that high school students at Navajo Pine High School does not have a computer lab. According to staff, they did have older computers, but those were all taken down, boxed up, and unsure of when new equipment was going to arrive, but we're in about a month now and there are no computers, so students are walking back and forth from the high school to the middle school. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because it's very important that we have the basic equipment for our students. Granted, we're out there in the rural areas. And the other thing that I have is programs that middle school students have to log into that they can't get into because of blockage of, I guess, I'm not sure what's going on, but they just keep telling me, well, district changed the code, district is trying out a new program. That's all I'm hearing. And during open house, I spoke to the teacher and she said, Renee, making copies is gonna get me so far. If we have the program up and running, there are assignments done color-coded. And she goes, how am I supposed to do that? All we're gonna see is black and white for the students, and how are they supposed to know which color to do or where they stand? And again, this is at the middle school. I really am concerned that we're in a month into school and we don't have this program up and running. Today I went back and I actually spoke to the teacher and I asked her if it was up and running. She's like, no, and I don't know what to do. So I'm bringing this to your attention. And the other thing that I want to bring to your attention is that she said, well, if I want to make large quantities of copies, she has to bring it to district. And I'm assuming it goes through first come, first serve on who's going to get it copied. And she asked and she's like, so why are we going to do that? It's just going to put me behind. So she's making her own copies there in Navajo. And then the other thing I want to bring to the district's attention, and this should have been done as soon as it was brought up, was I do appreciate and I'm very thankful that you guys are giving teachers free rent. It's great. We're keeping our teachers in Navajo. But I had asked when I went through the open house at the high school and at the middle school, what are your concerns? How can we help you? How can I help you as a parent? And a couple of the teachers came out and said they had very old appliances. They've been there since they started with the district. And I said, okay. And she goes, but we demolished the housings behind the elementary. And I said, where did those appliances go? And she's like, I don't know. All I asked was for one refrigerator. Renee, I had to go out and I had to purchase my own refrigerator. And I said, well, it seems like we're very wasteful. We could have went and took it upon ourselves and asked staff if they needed anything before they demolished a building. So I think we need to really look at keeping our teachers out there because we are in the rural areas and it seems like, I'm not saying we're starting it off this year, but we always get we're always at the end of the totem pole where our supplies come in at the end. But I'm going to say this, we improved, our scores improved. And there was a comment made by staff, by a principal, saying the only reason Navajo Pine High School improved was because they only had 80 students. And I'm here tonight to say we don't have 80 students. We have 125 students at the high school. And we're out in the rural area. He's just right here near the other side of Gallup. He has all the resources at his disposal. We're an hour out. So we need to quit putting other schools down and try to be a district and work together. I thank you for this time, and I hope this is great. This is a great year. I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you guys turn in a yellow form?
Which one? No,
Did you turn in that?
There's a form that needs to be filled out for public comments. So, you can submit one.
We'll let you comment at the end of the. Reports.
Mr. Shaw, members of the board, this evening there are no reports. As noted on the agenda, enrollment in dual credit will be moved until the next meeting in Peru in September. Number 3, Teach for America report will happen in October. So no reports for this evening.
Okay. Any board reports?
No, but I have a question for our or a comment for our superintendent. I know that, Mr. Hyatt, I know you have meetings with the principals, and lately I've been getting some concerns about me having to advise our employees, our staff, to go back and address the principals, and go by the chain of command. And hearing part of this again, from one of our constituents from Navajo, I'm worried, and it makes me nervous that our staff feel intimidated or scared, or scared was the word that I keep hearing, to do that, to go to their supervisors and tell them their concerns or their issues. So I don't know. Some I do know what the fear is. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to tell their supervisor how to run the boat or drive the car. But I don't know. Maybe there's something that you can mention or talk to your principals about. But it worries me when that communication is not there with our staff. And I don't know if there's a professional development. I don't know. I'm just saying, now we're hearing it from here again, and I'm just kind of concerned, sir, that our employees feel that they can't talk to the people that are in that chain of command. I don't know. So, if there's anything that can be done, I would appreciate that, because it seems like it's just concerning to me. But I don't know if you have.
Mr. Schaaf, this is not an action item or discussion item, but if you want to make it one in the future, we can do that, and I can answer the questions.
Do you have any case report?
Any report? I just commented because of the
Okay.
superintendent report.
Okay. No, I don't have a report.
Okay. Notices in communication.
Mr. Shaw, hold on. I was just commenting on the superintendent report, but under board report, one of the things that I asked for, Mr. Shaw, was a copy of the public comment, our board policy, and I asked our superintendent beforehand, maybe a board retreat or something that we can talk to our other colleagues and ourselves with superintendent to review this. But I think I would really like for them to review the board agenda, our board policy. I know there's a lot of changes that have been suggested from New Mexico School Board Association or from legislation that we need to update. So I would ask Mr. Hyatt if you guys could pull our board policies, and if we could start revising those, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we can do that collectively for all the board policies. And maybe I'll discuss that with the board president of how we might do that, so that we can get as much input as possible, whether that's the board reviewing the policies, administration reviewing the policies, and then coming together in a retreat, or create a central location for notes on some different board policies, ideas that might be changed. I know it's difficult to get everybody together at times, but we can definitely look into that and bring back a proposal to the board.
Thank you.
I think when we had the strategic planning and we all got together and worked on that as a team, that was so beneficial. And I think maybe taking some of the steps out by kind of having a review team first and then presenting it, that would be great. So thank you very much.
Anything else? Notices and communications. August 27th, 2019, board member filing of declaration of candidacy. September 2nd, 2019, Labor Day, no school. September 16th, 2019, parent teacher conference and Board of Education meeting. October 2nd, 2019, Region 1 meeting here in Gallup. Okay, Jody Dennison and Cecilia Fred, come up.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name's Jody Dennison. I am with Think First Navajo Injury Prevention Program. I live here in Gallup, but I'm originally from Tehachapi, New Mexico, and this is Cecilia Fred. The reason why we're here is we are a small nonprofit program, and we've been serving the Navajo Nation. This program started since 2005, and we've gone throughout the Navajo Nation to the schools, talking to the students about preventing brain and spinal cord injuries. And we have done some presentations here in the Gallup McKinley County schools. But I guess what we're asking, Cecilia and I, is if we need more support to get into some of the schools. We have gone to, we both have visited some schools. We do visit with the principal, the school counselor, but we don't really get a response. And so what we want to do is have your support. Last year we went down to the Zuni School District and I presented to the school board. And they supported our mission and we reached over 1,300 students. And our presentation is about 45 minutes. We utilized 2 different curriculums for the younger kids, the teens, and the high school. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Cecilia.
Good evening. My name is Cecilia Fred, and I have a spinal cord injury. I got injured at the age of 6 from a gunshot accident. I grew up in this chair, and I'm 63 years old now. What I do is talk to the kids about injury prevention. I don't want to see other kids the way I am, because there's a lot of things that you go through health. So what I do is I tell them my story, how I grew up, and I didn't get to go to school at all. So you board members, I wish you would support us and let the other schools, like the high school students, the mid-school students, the kids are very rough, and a lot of them don't really know what they're going through and what they do. They don't think ahead of time what can happen to them. Drinking and driving, drugs, and also football, roller skates, skateboards. There's a lot of things that can happen. In no time, somebody's going to end up the way I am, and I don't want the kids to end up the way I am. So this is the reason why I do presentations in the school, because I want them to have a happy life. Thank you.
Thank you. Under new business, approval of policy advisories number 185-197, Attendance for Success Act. Do we have any questions?
Is there somebody that's explaining that?
Mr. Schaaf, members of the board, as you know, we talked about, I think it was last meeting, maybe the meeting before also, is that the policy service for the New Mexico School Board Association, after every legislative session, goes through a process of changing policy for us so that we are in compliance with the law. And so it's pretty detailed as far as what the actual rule changes are with respect to attendance. And so those are outlined in your packet. Let's see if there's anything on there that there's some reporting requirements, changes with respect to when habitually truant student is actually become more lenient in that sense. Trying to find out. The wrong one here. There we go.
Turn that to the right here, that highlights everything, all the changes.
And so every legislative session, as you know, there's different changes, and so that's why we provided a copy of the details of every single one, instead of going through all of them. If you do have questions, you can take notes, and if you want further review of this particular item, we can still bring that up to the next meeting, because there is a lot here. But the list, the table on page 1, that goes over every single change.
Is it still 10 days before a child is dropped?
They changed that one, and I apologize, Dr. White was not able to be here this evening. She's the one that oversaw and looked at every one of these changes and created the table. It's now, if you look on, I think, page 3, I think it's a certain percentage of the year, like 10% of the year, that's when you're habitually truant, not just 10 days. And I believe they did that depending on different and the reason why they did that is because some school districts are on a 4-day week, some are on a 180-so-day week or school year, and like us, we're on a 188-day school year. So by doing a percentage, it's more equitably applicable to all different school districts instead of having an exact 10 days. Because the 10 days for somebody in a 4-day school week is a lot more missed time than it is for somebody who has 188 days like we do. So they made it a percentage.
But, Superintendent, but the 10 days, is that separate? I mean, it's like, so they can miss like 9 days and then come one day and then start missing again, and does it start all over, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a percentage of the year, not in a row, from what I understand. So if you miss 10 days, it used to be if you missed 10 days out of a school year, that classified you as habitually truant. Now it's a percentage of the school year. And it wasn't just in a row, it was scattered, it could be scattered throughout. 10 days was a drop or not. If you miss school for so many days, then you're dropped. Habitually truant, 10 days out of a school year.
So that would kind of help that issue that we do have, where kids miss 9 days, come on the 10th day to stay enrolled.
Right. That's going to count towards their percentage.
Yeah, those 9 days would be, okay.
Right.
That was a question I had, to see if that 10 days changed. I know one of the things I see on here on advisory 193, added absences for religious instructions and tribal obligation, clarified unexcused absence and absent. I know that we kind of had some issues on that before, and through, and I'm glad that has, I know Mr.
And Mr. Schaaf, members of the board, we probably do a better job at that than most districts in the state. I think the reason why this was added was because obviously we have a high number of students who are involved in religious activities on a regular basis, whereas some school districts don't have that, but that doesn't mean they don't have students that need that time off for those purposes, and so that's why the legislators made it more clear.
So will the attendance clerk people have a professional development to go over these new changes?
We will, whether it'll be professional development or it'll be information that's given to them from Dr. White, we want to definitely inform the principals and the attendance secretaries in some form or fashion. It has not been determined on how that will be at this particular time. We're waiting for the policy to be approved before we move forward.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have a motion.
So just a reminder that this is not the school district's changes, this is coming from the policy service, from the New Mexico School Board Association. We just outlined what the changes were.
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
So moved, or sorry, second.
Joan, roll call.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes. Okay. Adopt the resolution to grant a waiver for board member participation in the procurement of tangible goods and services for city pending to conduct business with the district.
Mr. Shaw, members of the board, as you know, whenever there is a related party vendor in the district, whether it's a school board member or any employee, we have to disclose that and have that approved by the board. In this particular case, this involves a school board member, Mr. Mortensen, and his, I guess, those who own businesses with him, purchased City Vending. City Vending is a, what do you call it, a vending machine service that across the area, across the county, even into Cibola County. And so that purchase happened a little while ago, and so we have to disclose that to you. This particular entity currently does not have a contract with the district, but they do service schools where they provide an opportunity for schools to raise money through like almost like a fundraiser. So the city vending splits the cost with the school. So the school keeps part of the money raised to those vending machines, and then the rest goes to the city vending. And so that's the reason why it's on the agenda this evening, is because Mr. Mortensen is now the owner of that company.
Superintendent, I had a question here. I know that at one point, some of the vending machines were either taken out of some of the schools due to principal choice or principal plus food services. Will those just stay the same, or if we have no contract and then they go back and decide, well, we want them or we don't want them now, or we can get them now, or however that works, how will we be in control of that?
So Mr. Shaw, Mr. Mortensen, we currently don't dictate on what somebody has to have or doesn't have to have in their school as far as a vending machine. That's done by principal's choice, whether they want to have one or not. For example, here at central office, we chose, because we don't want to deal with the money, the fundraising piece of it. It gets complicated when you're raising money as an administration versus students raising that money for their school. And so here we decided that we wanted a less cost for the item to make it more available to employees, and we don't take a cut of that, but it's cheaper for the employee. Schools can choose to have that vending machine whether they want to or not. If a principal doesn't feel like it's contributing to their fundraising efforts, or they feel it's a problem for food service, whatever it might be, then they eliminate that machine.
Yeah. Because
I'm not sure if that answers your question. I may have missed what your answer was.
Because I don't know who would dictate them, because I know we had major concerns at one point with those. And also, asking, where that money was actually being used. I mean, I know that Maya-Mira and Gallup High were getting a high percentage of money back from city vending per year. Where was that money actually going is one of the questions we asked. I don't think I ever found out.
Okay. Mr. Shaw, Mr. Mitchell, I couldn't tell you exactly where that money goes right now. It's up to the school to decide that. But I could provide easily through Giovanna Hanks a printout of what each school has spent that money on. Mr. Bond is here. He can speak a little bit about, he used to have vending machines in his school in the district and what he did with that money. When I was a principal, I wasn't a principal in this school district. In another school district with the same company, we'd use the money for parent-teacher conferences and those types of things. Mr. Bond, do you have an understanding of at least an idea of what principals are using that money for?
First, I want to just say one thing about it. So one of the things that we've had trouble with in the past is whether or not those vending machines meet the federal guidelines for healthy snacks. And we have tried to make sure that that happens. And so what our food service personnel do, our supervisor in food service, she goes out and she actually purchases things out of those vending machines and runs them through a computer program as far as the ingredients to make sure it meets the healthy snack guidelines from the federal government. If it doesn't, we notify city vending and they have to pull those items from the machine. So we are very careful to try and make sure that that happens. And the reason is because when the federal government comes in to audit us, that if we have things like that in their machines or our machines that are going through our schools, they could actually pull money from us. So we try to make sure that that does not happen. Now, money that is raised from those vending machines goes into an administrative activity fund, and yeah, it can be used for a lot of different things. It could be used for things that have to do with staff, as well as it can be used for students. And so a lot of times it just happens to be used for students. If, you know, a group of students come and say, we would like to purchase this, and they don't have money in the account or whatever, sometimes administrative account is used for that. But administrative accounts can also be used to do things for staff. A lot of times we purchased food for parent-teacher conferences because we didn't have that service going on when I was a principal. And so we would provide meals for parent-teacher conference, and we would pay for it out of that money.
Yeah,
really what happens with
athletic
that...
banquets, I'm trying to think back what I used to spend the money on. Athletic banquets were another area we would spend the money on.
Yeah, banquets for kids, whether it's academic banquets. A lot of times the athletic banquets are raised by the athletes themselves. But really that money kind of gets put in a pot. And so there's other money that goes into that pot. And so it would be actually hard to tell you exactly where the money from vending comes from, because it goes into an administrative activity account where there's a bunch of different money that comes into there and then it goes out. But all of that is audited and properly spent according to business guidelines.
Okay, so with that being said, so is the money all turned in such as any other fundraising money that comes in through the district, as far as, is it turned into a central office and then distributed back as needed, or do they just keep it at their school site? And,
No.
and if so, then how is that accountable?
Mr. Schaaf, Mr. Mitchell, it's similar to a fundraiser when an entity raises money at a school site. So we know who is doing business with this particular vendor, and so we have oversight of that. We also account for those funds, but there's not a specific contract with the district. So it's not that we don't have auditing capacity over those funds, just like any other fundraiser. We just don't have a contract district-wide for the services of this particular vendor. And again, this particular action item isn't to talk about how that's done, it's to disclose the particular board member who owns that company.
Well, I think,
But we can give you the information as soon as Javon.
I know it's not to be, it's not on the agenda for that, but that is leading to the approval or not approval of this, because one of my questions, I have several questions. Mr. Mitchell has alluded to some, but I know that in the past, we did have issues due to the when SFA came in, they were very worried about the vending machines in our schools. I would like a full report on where these vending machines are in our school district, what are in their machines, what are they selling in those machines, and how much is being spent. I want to know how much goes to the vendor and how much the school keeps, and like the whole budget, and what they're using that money for. And I know that this is probably the second or third resolution that we are doing for Mr. Mortensen and family. So there'll be this one, and then there's another one for sewer?
There's two other ones.
Sounds
One's
good.
for a plumbing company, which we've never used since it was approved, I believe. And then also for porta potties, which we have used some.
Okay, so if we're not using them, should we void that contract?
Not necessarily.
resolution?
Mr. Shop, Mrs. Mangalito, we keep as many vendors on just in case we do need them, in case of an emergency. Why they haven't particularly been used or not, I couldn't speak to, but I'm pretty sure they haven't been used since we actually approved that procurement, or that related party notice a couple of years ago.
I think, I would like to motion to table this until we see, I really want to know the information behind these vending, the vending machines, to see how, I want to make sure they're being used correctly and there is healthy snacks in there, and I want to make sure that the money's being spent right, before we say yes, to Mr. Mortensen and, continuing on the vending, because I want to make sure that it's being utilized first. So that would be my motion, is to table, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah. So I don't know if we would need a report of how he would be handling all this to make sure it's fair, because I do know that at one point when we did get a report that, Maya Mira and Gallup, they were getting a good amount of money. But then if we leave it up to the principals, it's not fair for the principals who don't want it, and then our other schools aren't going to be able to utilize extra funding like they could be, just because the principal may not want the vending machines. So I don't know, like you said, we can't dictate it, but out of fairness, I think each school should be able to utilize a vending machine that they might be able to profit for anything extra that they could get. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but I do know that some principals were saying yes, some principals were saying no. We're not going to have no vending machine, but knowing that we as a district, we can, as a school, as an individual school, they should be willing to be able to accept any little extra money that they could utilize to help teacher development or whatever. I don't know.
So, Mr. Shaw, members of the board, I want to make sure I understand what your request is. To approve or not a related party vendor, you want to know where their products are located, or where the machines are located, what's in them, how much money is collected, and the amount that goes to the vendor versus the amount the school keeps. And I'm a little bit confused, Mr. Mitchell, on your request, other than whether I guess that answers the question of where they're at, so you'll know what schools have them versus what schools choose not to have them.
Yeah. And
I think for me, when we had this issue, maybe 2 years ago, was it 2 years? It's been a while, but and I know there's principals at different places now. So, we've changed principals around, or we moved some assistant principals up to principals. So maybe they want it now. Maybe these other entities want it, but I just think I just want to make sure before we say yes or no to this, that I want to know those vending machines are properly the funds are properly being spent out of those vending machines, and the transparency needs to be there first, and because it's kind of shady, because I remember hearing a complaint about this before, but we just thought it was resolved, and it probably was, but I don't know.
It has been.
Okay.
We, like Mr. Bond said, members of the board, Mrs. Mangalito, the food service checks that we have an employee, Supervisor Linda Gallegos, she goes around and checks. There's a calculator and goes through the machines to check to make sure the food in there is appropriate. And in the past, we did have a problem. Lately, we haven't seen that problem, even with the old vendor that owned the company beforehand. We haven't seen that problem recently. I know that there was a meeting between our food service and the vendor recently about the rules and regulations, since there was a change in ownership. And so I guess the only thing that I see that the vendor can control is what the take home for the company is versus the school. I think it's 50-50, but I'll have to double check that. But that's the only thing that the vendor control. The rest of the items on here are under the school district control.
Yeah, because Superintendent Hyatt, I know that when it was brought up 2-3 years ago, there was no amount. I mean, the company itself knew the amount of what they were providing to each school, or what the schools got. We, as the district, we didn't know the figure, and so when it was asked, it was like, well, the school has the money and they have that number. We didn't have the number, but then we got the number actually from the vendor itself, because they said, this is what we gave to Miami High School. This is the amount we gave to Gallup High, and it was quite a bit of money. And so, but we didn't have the figure.
Mr. Schaaf, Mr. Mitchell, I think one of the problems you're referring to had to do with our own internal software system, financial software system. Every school had their own. As you know, that we centralized that, and so we have access to everybody's accounting or everybody's funds. Whereas in the past, it was done on a monthly basis. Now we have instant access through Visions to find out how much money is in a specific account.
So Vision would have a date and time and amount on when the vending machine money was deposited.
Yes.
And then that Vision will also say, with a code, I'm assuming, would say, okay, we use the vending money to purchase this or pay for this. Okay, good. So it'll be an easy answer.
Absolutely. That's why I said Giovanna could easily print that out with the information.
Okay.
My point was that the only thing on the list that you're asking me to do has to do with the vendor specifically, is how much the profit is. It's the only thing I can't answer right now. But the other things, I can easily pull that from our side.
What do you mean? How much the vendor gets? Wouldn't that just be half?
I said I believe that it's about half, but that's one of the questions that you specifically asked that you wanted an answer to. And what I'm saying is that under the vendor's control, that's the only piece that they have in place. And so the other items have to do with what we control, and the other part has to do with an agreement between the vendor and the school.
Yeah. So my comment to that would be, so once we agree to this, we don't even know what the percentage is, or do we get a contract? Once we approve this, do we get a contract with them having the percentages on there?
No, Mr. Schaaf, currently we don't, and Ms. Mangalito, we don't do a contract with the school district. The schools have an agreement with the vendor for what the percentage is, and it's the same for everybody, whatever that percentage. I believe it's 50-50. And so that's what I'm saying. This is just to let you know, the only reason this item is on here is to state that we are acknowledging that a school board member does business with the school district, just like we would if, I guess, I owned a business, or Mr. Bond owned a business, or a teacher's husband owned a business and they were a partner in that business. It's a related party to acknowledge that, that we understand that that's happening, and we acknowledge it and transparent to the public. That's the purpose of it.
Yeah.
So,
But it's bringing, I'm glad it's on here, because I think these other concerns need to be answered before we get here.
yeah, and Superintendent, that's my main thing is, I just don't want to run into any problems that a board member is part of this vending thing, and then we go and start changing things to where, okay, well, all schools will have to have these vending machines, or, just things like that. So we need to know prior what the arrangements are going to be. I guess that's more.
I think
that's
I
what
understand
I'm
what you're saying now, Mr. Schaaf, Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Mangalito. I'm going to try to rephrase what I think I'm hearing, and so I can make sure I understand what's being asked. So what you're trying to create is making sure there's a level of equity, and that's understood between the vendor and the school district, so that the vendor couldn't say, I'm only going to put it in these schools and not these schools. That's open access to everybody if they so choose.
Yes.
In addition to that percentage that's split, that it's also the same for every school. You just want to ensure that also. And I'm speaking specifically about the vendor themselves. And then on the other side of it, on our end, you want to know what the money's being spent on, how much money's being raised, et cetera. Is that?
Yes.
Could you please provide us a copy of that contract that the schools have with the vendor?
We don't have a. Because I would like, well, the main other thing was, I think that the schools that I know that, were saying that they didn't want it or whatever, to me, they may not have understood, what this extra money can actually do for their schools. And I think they need to be educated on that and to know that, this is extra money that you guys can utilize to help your school. It's not like the money will be shared with the whole district. This is money coming to your school, extra money coming to your school that you can utilize.
Right.
And I think they know, some don't know.
Well, we'll double check. I honestly, I couldn't speak to any schools I don't know of any high schools that don't have them in their school. I could be wrong. But maybe there's some elementaries that don't, because typically students that age aren't typically purchasing at a vending machine, so it may be predominantly in the secondary schools.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
There's a motion on the floor?
Do I have a motion?
There is a motion on the floor.
I motion to
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
No. Okay, item C, approval to accept the updated 2019-20 annual preventive maintenance plan.
That's right here. And those binders, they're all different. There's 4 different binders for 4 different.
Mr. Schaaf, members of the board, as you know, we are required by the state of New Mexico through the PSCOC process to keep a 5-year facility master plan. Every 5 years, we redo that plan, but we have the option during the middle of that time frame to make adjustments. And because we are continually advocating for more funding from the state of New Mexico regarding our school facilities, we felt it was appropriate this last year to update and make sure that it is as accurate as possible as we continue to let the state know where our deficiencies are. And so the general number that we quote quite often is we have a $250 million, it's $250 million deficit in our school district due to lack of funds available to fix and maintain our schools.
How
So
much? I'm sorry?
approximately 250 million. We can get the exact number here. It's towards the last page here.
They're all different, Mike.
No, there's-
They're all different.
Each one of these is a different
Yeah, they're all
binder.
different binders for different things on the agenda
Oh.
item. It's a lot to copy, so that's how Mr. Bond brought it.
No, it's in this. So Mr. Bond, can you run up here really quickly and give me the specific page number for that item? Or Mr. Bond, I should call you up. Maybe you already have the answer to that since this is your item. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we skip one?
This is the approval to accept the updated 2019-20 annual preventive maintenance plan. D is to approve to accept the updated 5-year facilities master.
So the
I'm
annual
sorry, yes, you're
preventive,
correct.
the annual preventive maintenance plan, every year we have to update the preventive maintenance plan. And really that is the plan that we use in our maintenance and operations department to make sure that we get things done, that we purchase the equipment and we have the manpower and resources to accomplish what we need to in the district to keep our facilities up according to the specs that the state gives us. And so we have to review that maintenance plan every year and update it. And so that's basically what this item is on number C, or letter C, is to update that. The other thing that goes along with that is when we apply for money from the state, we have to have an updated plan, or it actually knocks, they have a point system to give us money to apply for new facilities. If we don't have an updated maintenance plan, then about 30% of those points we don't get to begin with. So that forces us to definitely update that and have a maintenance plan. The other thing that we use with the maintenance plan is what is called School Dude. It is a work order system so that principals or facility managers have the opportunity to put in a work order that comes to our maintenance department, that gets assigned out to one of our maintenance techs, and then they go out and do whatever that is or fix whatever that work order is, and then they come back and say, yes, this has been done. And so it's a way for the state to make sure that we are accomplishing the things we need to as far as upgrading our maintenance and doing work orders.
Mr. Vaughn, I think that's my biggest issue in my district is things that we need. And again, it goes back to the comment I made earlier. And it bothers me when the comment I hear is we're used to it in the rural areas. And that's when I have a couple of things that were given to me, and I thought, well, how come you guys didn't submit a work order? Or how come you guys haven't get this? It's been like this for 2 years, and they came out, looked at it, and nothing's been done since. And I'm like, well, submit another one. They're like, oh, they'll get to it when they get to it, but we're used to it. And I'm like, they're used to it. That hurts so much because our kids need, like, okay, I'll tell you one. We hosted Socorro Friday night at the football game. Socorro had an elderly woman that drives those wheelchair, the motorized ones. She couldn't sit with her side of the team, which is on the other side of the football field, because when her husband and I saw them coming because I was passing out water to Socorro, and then I passed out water to our side of the team. There's a ramp, a wooden ramp that looks very shady. So they were sitting, when I was passing out water, her husband and I moved down to the end of way down to the end. So later on, when I was done passing out water, I went to them and I said, I can go ask our principal for the little not alligator, what's it called? The little
tractor you're talking about.
Yeah, the little tractor. If you
Gator,
want to,
whatever.
if you want to go sit across. And she was like, no, it's okay. And she didn't want to move to landscape, but I know that's their team sitting on the other side.
Right.
So I went. I talked to the athletic director there, and apparently the ramp was the wrong way, but they turned that around because it's not like a ramp. It's not like a triangle like this. It's just a board that has two other 2x4s underneath it, but they tilt it on the high part so it kind of angles down. And I felt really bad that and we don't think of it until we have somebody that needs those accommodations. And I would really like that accommodation being met and I think it needs to be checked at all our schools, because I don't know if they're being met for our special needs individuals. That I'm just glad I was there at that game, because they would have sat on Theroux's side, which was fine, but they shouldn't have to if we have the accommodations made for them. So that was just one thing that I wanted to comment on, because I'm tired of hearing we're used to it.
And I totally agree with you that all of our schools should not get used to having things not work. That's one of the things that our maintenance department is working on. We do keep records of how long it takes us to do work orders. We have goals set to try and make sure that improves. We are coming up with expectations for our maintenance tech that I don't believe we've ever had before, to try and make sure things get done, as well as a way to communicate the needs that schools have and be able to communicate back to them when things are fixed. So we are working on all of that. There's the leadership of the maintenance department has changed in the last year, and so there's a lot of things that we are trying to do to try and improve a lot of the issues that you're talking about. And so I agree with you that we should not ever get used to somebody saying, yeah, that we turned that in 2 years ago and it just never got fixed. They need to continue to put in work orders. What we tell them is if you put in a work order and it doesn't get done, you call either the supervisor or the director of that department and let them know. And those calls have been happening. And so part of the reason that we're struggling right now is we're trying to catch up on a lot of those things. And so we're going to get them done. It may take us a little bit of time. Some of the issues that you're talking about could have to do with the facility master plan, which Mr. Hyatt was talking about. You know, there's some things that, because we're so far behind on funding, that we just can't fix everything at once, because we're way behind on a lot of that. But at this point, this one is just to update the annual maintenance plan and try and improve the things that are going on in the school district.
So which part of this with special needs accommodation would that fall under, this or the 5-year?
Well, it depends on, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but if it has something to do with replacement of bleachers and how that works, that could actually be part of a 5-year maintenance plan. But if it's just building a new ramp, then we can probably take care of that and make sure that happens.
Well, do they go out? Does someone go out and inspect for special needs, like the buttons that they need to be able to push?
We do that, yes.
So,
but there's a lot of those things that the principal should let us know about as well, because they see issues that, you know, the maintenance department may not see. Because if something like that happens, then, and we haven't checked on that because it's not happened in the past or whatever, it needs to get turned in so that we can do something about it.
and do they go down into these areas? There's the football field, the tennis,
Yes.
you know, okay, and
Mr. Schaaf, Mrs. Manuelito, they go through every single school. And as you know, they look, I know we're jumping topics here back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
That's partly my fault for jumping to the exciting one first. But when we build a school, you know that we build to adequacy. And what they do is they look at all the problems that we have with our school and then also add in all the things that we didn't get between adequacy and an educational spec. So if a school should have a baseball field, then they didn't get one, then it should be in there. Or if there is a roof that's failing, then they'll put that in there as far as what it would cost to replace that roof. And so I actually have a page here that shows every single school and how much money it would take to get them up to an educational spec. So they look at every single system, every single school site. They even look at the numbers of students. I mean, they're looking at the whole gamut of what that school needs over a 5-year period of time, every school. And they touched every single school and spent lots of hours in every single one of them.
But really, this first one, like I said, is really the daily maintenance of our facilities to try and help us to improve those things. That's what the preventive maintenance plan is all about.
And I know that with the issue, I just one of our coaches oversees the wood shop part, and you know, he was like, we can build another one, but then I'm nervous about that too, because I know there has to be a certain grade, steep grade, and
Right.
you know, all that kind of stuff again. So I said thank you, we would appreciate that, but then on the other hand, it's like, I don't know if that will be acceptable by law or whatever,
Right.
but I just want you to know that, you know, I wanted to know that because it was something, I just wanted to know where it would be at in here in the maintenance plan or the 5-year.
They do cover that, Mrs. Manuelito, in the 5-year facility. I remember asking this question because I didn't ask it, she brought it up. So I was asking, what are you actually
Yeah.
saying are the deficiencies? And she actually mentioned ADA. Like, I look for ADA. They're looking for all code compliance.
And one of the things that we're trying to do is that we try to replace most of those ramps with aluminum ramps now, because they last forever. The wooden ones, you know, 2 or 3 years, 5 years, the rain, pretty soon they start warping like this and they're not any good, and we replace them. So they're more expensive, the aluminum ones, but they're going to outlast the wooden ones, you know, probably 5 times.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we I have a motion to accept the updated 2019-20 annual preventive maintenance plan?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Move down to item D, approval to accept the updated 5-year facilities master plan.
Mr. Shaw, members of the board, I apologize, I jumped to that one first. So without going over everything again, the 5-year facility master plan essentially goes through what are all of our deficiencies by school, and the total is $262 million. I actually have a chart here that I could tell you by school what the amount is per school as far as a deficiency. And I'll throw out a couple examples. And as you know, the closer a school is to being replaced, obviously they're higher on the list as far as how much need there is in that school to fix it to an educational spec. And the newer schools would have less need. The only odd one on this list is Lincoln. During the time of that planning, it was still under construction, and so this money, or this dollar amount, refers to the old school rather than the new school. Obviously, the new school doesn't need, let me see here, they don't need $16.5 million worth of issues to be fixed. So that's the only item on here that's not accurate as of right now. But I'll use an example from each of one of your areas. Through high school has a deficit of $12.7 million, almost $12.7 million that it needs to bring that school up to an educational spec currently. Through high school is also higher on the list. I think it is 120th
123
approximately,
or something like that.
as far as schools needing to be replaced in New Mexico. Tehachapi, $22.67 million, and as you know, that's higher on the list as far as replacement. Mr. Schaaf, I'll pick Rocky View for fun. Rocky View Elementary, $11.4 million is the deficit for that school that needs to be put in order to bring it up to an educational spec. And so we start adding those numbers up, it gets to over a quarter of $1 billion. That's why this issue of impact data is so important. That's why we're fighting for this funding. That's why we have a lawsuit that we're pending an outcome of that suit. And that's why we're continuing to share our story of what's happening in our district. And that's why you have issues. The issues are not just county versus city. The issues are all over the place. We have tried to, for those schools that are not going to be replaced soon, but still have deficits, we tried to bring some of those schools up. For example, you know, we put a lot of money into Navajo, not Navajo, with furniture we did at Navajo and bleachers. Tehachapi, we put some furniture, I believe, into that school. We also put furniture into, it was Crown Point and Thoreau. Replaced furniture. We also did some painting on the schools, demolished teacherages, and those types of things. So we spent a significant amount of money in the county recently. But if I look, as I told you, I went around and looked at air conditioning systems. The air conditioning systems are sporadic throughout the district as far as needs. And then the problem is we can't keep up with them because we don't have the millions of dollars to fix them. We don't have the property tax base. We don't receive enough impact aid dollars to remedy those problems. And so we're scrambling for funds and asking the state, and you know what that process is. It takes many months, if not years, to get funding from them. The money that's coming in, we have an opportunity to apply for $24 million pot of funds. We got the application this past week. We're hoping to get 6 or 7 to 8 million of those dollars of the 24 million that we fought for during this legislative session. And specifically, they're to fix roofs. Tehachapi Mid, prime example. Beautiful schools, part of it remodeled. The new part of the school has $1 million worth of roof issues. So fix roofs, air conditionings across the district. There's several schools, most of them actually in town, that never had air conditioning installed in them in the classrooms. It's in the hallways.
Yeah.
There was a few out of town, like Cheadodge. David Skeet had the same issue. The rest of them, I believe, are in town. They did not receive air conditioning. And so roofs, those, and then also we still need teacherages. Need to build a few more teachers, about 32 units to keep up with demand. Just right there, we're over $10 million probably to fix those issues, or actually, it's probably higher than that. I'm just talking about covering a few of those schools that need it. So again, this is just that we had the person go, we didn't have to do this, but we just wanted to have a more accurate representation of what our deficits are in the district as far as construction and maintenance issues, so that as we continually go to the state and ask for money and fight for this funding, we can give them an accurate representation of what each school needs. Essentially, that's what a 5-year facility master plan does for us right now. And we're still in the middle of the cycle. I think when's the end of the cycle?
2017 to 2022.
Yeah, so in 2022, we'll go out for RFP to have a vendor come in and reassess our schools again at that time. But typically, it hovers around $250 million in the last few years.
Any questions?
My question is on the work orders, because I see there have some goals. It says, one of the things, update district maintenance plan using best practices and stuff like that, and then complete 90% or better of PM work. What is that? What's PM? Is that like evening work, or is that
That's
preventive
maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
On time as measured monthly, cut work order completion time in half. What is their current statistics on these things? Do you know?
Somewhere, I would actually have to go and look, but we just did that, and it's over 20 days to have a work order completed. I think it was about 22 or 23 days, and so we need to cut that easily in half. You know, I mean, part of the reason some of that happens is because if something is not working and you have to order parts, then sometimes that takes a little longer, but it still should not take 22 days to fix most of our issues. And
Yeah, so it's one of
we
our
need to
goals
work
with our
on that.
strategic plan is to cut that in half.
Yeah.
Are the air conditioning systems, how's the maintenance work done on that? Because a lot of the times, I mean, Tohatchi High, I mean, I never hear maintenance or anything going on with the air conditioning system until it's broken down and no longer working and we have no heat or no air. Then somebody's out there looking at it. What is the maintenance procedure on those?
There's supposed to be a maintenance plan where filters are changed every year, where motors are checked to make sure they're working. So yeah, there is a plan to try and make that happen. It has not been followed very well in the past, and so that's part of why we have this updated maintenance plan, to try and make sure that we get those things done. In the past,
I'm going to disagree to some extent, though, because I think we have to understand that we just sued the state of New Mexico because they don't give us enough funding for our maintenance team in the first place. We also don't have the expertise in our area, and we also have the largest school district in the whole entire state, if not one of the country, one of the top in the country. And so those are added costs to even take care of these issues. So even if I had the money, I would still have to have the people to be able to fix those things. And so what typically does happen is we're trying to keep things going when really these systems need to be replaced. And so there's several systems, for example, where we had to remodel a school instead of build a new one because the state wouldn't give us enough money. And so then you have an old system that goes on several more decades past its life cycle before we can actually get a new one, because we have to wait again for a longer period of time to get a new school. And so we're constantly trying to patch things because we can't appropriately fix them because we don't have the millions of dollars to do so. And so what happens, a prime example is at Tohatchi. I know Tohatchi mid this year, I went out there and I saw maintenance crews trying to get that system going, and they did. But when really some of these things need to be totally replaced, we're almost band-aiding them because we don't have the funds. We don't have the people power to take care of every single issue, and even if we did, we still need the money to make sure that we can replace those items. And so some of the issues are waiting for parts. We have brand new schools that at times need to be fixed. We had this just this month. We had brand new schools, Lincoln, where we had some issues with their air conditioning and other things and trying to keep them going. Now, obviously, that's not going to take as much money as, say, a Tohatchi or a Thoreau High or a Rocky View, serious problems at Rocky View, or a Stagecoach. So,
Superintendent, so what you're saying is we don't actually have an expert out there who knows air conditioning, heating, cooling. We just have our maintenance people.
Mr. Mitchell, we do have people that have expertise in that area, but it's very few. We don't have enough. And this area, in our whole county, there's not enough. And so when you ask plumbing companies or HVAC companies in our community whether they need employees, typically they all say that's one of the highest demanded people in or professions in our area is HVAC people, because we don't have the access to those people, say, in Albuquerque. And so if we can't meet our demand with the people that we have, then we have to go out and hire somebody to come in and fix it. Well, that's going to even cost even more to bring somebody from an Albuquerque to come out, either whether it's a bid on the job or come out and drive that distance to fix a problem, and the time it takes before they can come out and do that. It's almost like this thing we just can't keep up with. It compounds and compounds because we don't have the $250 million just to fix everything and be done with it. And that's why we chose to pick our worst schools and try to fix them. So as you know, we're working on David Skeet, we're working on Chi Dodge, and we fixed Turpin as far as heating or the air conditioning, because they didn't have any air conditioning in the classrooms, or the air conditioning was failing. Each one of those projects costs about $1.7 to $2.5 million each to fix and to replace the system. So if you start multiplying that times even 10 schools, we're getting close to $30 million. And we don't even have the bonding capacity to do that, nor the mill levy revenue to do that. And we just found out that our property values just got cut almost in half just this last week, due to a lawsuit that happened. And so we're going to have even less revenue in order to take care of our issues. And that's why our fight with the state to get more funding is so important.
Thank you.
A couple of more questions. Are we fully staffed in our maintenance area at each school?
In our maintenance department, we are not. There are times that we will go out and advertise for a licensed electrician, and we'll have no applicants that meet the qualifications, or a journeyman plumber, or things like that. And so the high needs area, or the licensed people, we do have a hard time finding those. I believe we're down 2 or 3 right now, out of about 32 or 36 employees in that department. So we're down about 10%, but it is the high-skilled licensed folk that we have a hard time attracting.
How about just like our janitors, and are we fully staffed there?
As far as I know, yes. I mean, we continually advertise as people resign or retire, but they are filled fairly quickly for custodians.
Mr. Shaw, Ms. Manuelito, we usually don't have a difficult time finding classified staff in our schools. It comes to when you're trying to find specialized staff in different areas, whether that's special education or whether that's HVAC.
My other question is, do our the staff that live in our teacherage, do they have the number to the maintenance department in case there is a water leak, or they have issues like refrigerator, or their stove is out, or something like that? Do they have the number to that?
Mr. Shaw, Mrs. Manuelito, we have a landlord that oversees different areas of the district, not just one, but 3. I think we're advertising for a 4th, or maybe we found the 4th. We split up Tehachapi and Navajo. I think we're trying to find somebody in the Navajo area. So that's their first contact, point of contact. They also have access to their supervisor, their principal at their school.
Okay, and my other question is, I'm looking at this current preventative maintenance schedule. Some are done annually, monthly, quarterly, and semi-annually. So who's in charge of looking at the fire extinguishers, playground equipment, boilers, grease traps, furnaces? It has a whole list of stuff that needs to be checked. So who does this?
So, Ms. Manuelito, there are different departments and foremen in the maintenance department. And so there's a foreman that oversees each of those things and makes sure that happens. We also have a supervisor and a director that oversee those foremen to make sure that all of that is happening.
And it's difficult. So if you think about all the issues we're trying to keep up on, trying to do both, again, another issue that compounds, trying to keep up on maintenance while trying to fix things that are falling apart.
So do they have a time when they get together and discuss or prioritize different things, or how do you guys work that out? Who decides, okay, that is precedence over this school, or is there a joint meeting that you guys review these kind of things?
So, Ms. Manuelito, what happens is every morning, they go through the work orders that are turned in, and they prioritize those work orders and send them out. Every foreman oversees about 4 or 5 people, and so the work orders are given to foremen based on the need, and they prioritize those and send the folks out to get things done.
Is that in Visions?
Say that again?
Is that in Visions again?
That,
It's in
no,
School
that is
Dude.
in School Dude.
Different system.
Is the program.
School
That's
Dude.
where work orders are turned in.
So you guys can look up for me, like the water issue we're having in Theroux Field, and you can see how many work orders have been turned in for that, to see if it really was, and then it'll say fixed or not fixed, or parts ordered, or something like that on there again.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve to accept the updated 5-year facilities master plan?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Joan, roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Okay,
Mr. Shaw, I'd like to motion to adjourn, sir.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.
7:16.
7:16.
Good job, Mr. Shaw.